Welcome to another entry in the Hyrule Compendium. Today our topic was suggested by Elfsong713. They wanted us to actually do a ranking of all the water temples, but we thought it might be interesting to do a more specific water temple. If you guys like this idea, maybe you could suggest other temples or dungeons you'd like us to discuss.
So we're going to talk about the water temple specifically from Ocarina of Time. The first real big water temple. We were discussing whether this was the first water dungeon or not. Like in A Link to the Past, we got the Swamp House where you needed the flippers, and then Link's Awakening had two water-based dungeons where there were some like underwater sequences and one of the bosses is fought underwater. But this one, I guess because it's a 3D realm and there's like more elevation, there's just a lot more going on, and most of the dungeon takes place in the water.
I don't think you could have done a dungeon like this in any of the previous 2D games. I think of all the dungeons in Ocarina of Time, this one really shows off what a Zelda in 3D could be like. What were your first initial experiences with the water temple?
So, when you're first playing the game for the first time, and I played this back in 1998, there was no thoughts about what the water temple was. So this was brand new. It was just the next, temple. I went through the forest temple, I went through the fire temple. I did it in the traditional order. And when I did get to the water temple, I was extremely confused because it's not a very linear dungeon at all. Because you're in that first open room and there are several different locations you can go in. Some of them lead to dead ends, some of them lead to locked doors that you need a small key from another section of the temple. It was truly a big maze.
One thing that makes it even more complicated is, like, for example, you can go to the room where you meet Ruto, and you can go up, but you can also go back there when the water level is at a different level. And what can get confusing about it is you could think, oh, I've already been there, so I don't need to go back there. But really, you do have to backtrack to some of these places when the water level is at a different level.
Yeah, I recall that particular room, there's a bunch of torches. But when you're underwater, the torches are just whatever. But when there's no water, when you've lowered the water level, there's now a puzzle in that room because you have to light the torches. You don't even think about that when there's water.
And as you're floating up to go to lower the water level, you float by that bombable wall. You think, oh, how can I get to that?
Yes.
Because then you lower the water level, but you still can't get to it because it's on the second floor.
I've always tried to strategically jump and roll and do like a jump slash to try to land on that second floor.
Is that possible?
I think it is,
okay.
Actually.
That's pretty cool.
Speedrun strats.
I think it's unique compared to all the other Ocarina of Time dungeons.
I think I used the dungeon map, the in-game dungeon map, more than any other dungeon. Because I was like literally thinking, where have I not been yet? And then you look at I need to go down that corridor. Oh, I can't go down that corridor. I gotta lower the water. And you have to piece together where you have to go to lower the water. Then you have to come back to that area. Now you can make it down that corridor.
Yeah, the idea of like having to actually look at the map is something that I associate more with the 2D, the classic games, because they kind of design it to where you can go to all these different parts of the dungeon and get different keys and kind of have to actually think about where to use them, compared to something like the Forest Temple or even the Fire Temple, the Shadow Temple especially in Ocarina of Time, where you get a key and then you basically know where you're going to use it.
Right. This dungeon actually, I looked it up, it has 6 small keys. And I know there's that, I think it's the pathway that leads to Dark Link. There's a locked door initially, and then you can, once you get that first small key, you can go in that direction, but then it just leads to another locked door. So you gotta backtrack and go through some of the rooms the second time.
In that sense, it doesn't really give you much option on where to spend your keys.
Right,
But
yeah.
the element of changing the water level, I think, makes it so much more complicated than you get a key, you go to the key door.
Well, there are several small keys that you can get in different orders as well. There's no proper order of doing this dungeon, at least not the entirety of the dungeon. It's not step 1, 2, 3, 4, it's step 1, 2, and then you can do 3, 4, 5 in any order.
I really do like the concept where the dungeon itself is the puzzle, where you're not just solving these one-off puzzles in room by room, but you have to think about how each room works.
Especially when you can manipulate the dungeon a little bit. This is sort of like with Breath of the Wild as well. Each of the divine beasts, you rotate something and it changes the geometry of the dungeon a little bit. I'm not sure if that's what you were getting at, but like...
Oh, definitely. But what makes it even more interesting in previous games to Breath of the Wild is you have to go to like a specific area. If the water level is at the second level and you need to get it to the third level, you have to remember, okay, I have to go to this door on the west side and go through this whole little path up to the top to raise the water level to the top so I can go to this other room. Whereas like in Breath of the Wild, if you need to alter the thing itself, you can do it from wherever you are.
Right, yeah.
So it's a little easier.
Let me ask you, did you have a lot of trouble with the water temple the first time you played it?
Yeah, when I was young, I did. And like you said, it was before there was opinions about it, where, you know, the water temple is the hardest dungeon. You know, it's like a meme now. We talked in a previous video about how I got into the series, and Ocarina of Time wasn't a game that hooked me at first. The water temple, I kind of hit a wall there. Like as a 8 or 9 year old, I couldn't really figure it out. I really didn't come back to Ocarina of Time and beat it until after our Majora's Mask. You know, that really hooked me in as a fan. So then I was like, all right, I gotta go play this game.
Were there particular parts of the water temple that like stuck out that you couldn't figure out?
Well, definitely the one key you get in the center pillar room.
Right, that one was the tough one for me. I might be wrong with this, but I think in the original version it doesn't point that out to you that you can go down there. But I believe in Ocarina of Time 3D, doesn't it change the camera angle where it shows that platform rising?
In Ocarina of Time 3D, it's very blatant.
I think getting to the criticisms of this dungeon, especially the Nintendo 64 version, the big things are how many times you have to like basically access the pause menu.
That was something that at the time I didn't notice. Like you said, this is before there was these criticisms were kind of a universal thought. I wasn't really thinking that playing as a kid. Now going back to it, now that I've played Ocarina of Time 3D, it's really annoying.
I'd go a step further in saying on my second or third playthrough of the game, it stood out more. Because now it's no longer, you're not thinking of, you know what you need to do. And it's just a matter of going through the motion of doing it and just pausing, going, equipping, unpause. It's like takes 5-6 seconds or something. But
you're really specifically thinking about it.
But that's something that's been completely washed away with Ocarina of Time 3D. Basically making the Iron Boots an equipable item as opposed to like a equipment piece. I think the other thing is just having to play the ocarina over and over and over.
It doesn't bother me as much. There is one part where I can't remember specifically, but you're like, okay, I need to go to this room, and I think you have to go through like a whole loop of the songs, changing it.
You have to change it twice, I believe, to get it to the proper level.
But that's another thing that the first time you play it, you don't know because you're still exploring. In this, now when you know what you need to do, that's what makes it annoying.
And I think in Ocarina of Time 3D, they also adjusted this where they put some color lineage on the wall that showed the direction of the raising and lowering water areas. It's one of those things that you might remember things as, oh, you go to the second floor on the west side. Somebody now playing Ocarina of Time 3D would be like, oh, you go to where that green little line is.
What'd you think of the overall, like, the atmosphere of this dungeon?
Oh, it was great. I know we were talking about, in one of our previous videos, about the music. Like, that sticks with me. I know the sound of the water temple. And it's one of those things that a lot of games, like The Legend of Zelda, it's like you're going room to room to room, might be a hallway. But Ocarina of Time, especially the water temple, it had that grand room where it was like there's 12 different exit points. It gave a larger scope to the dungeon a little bit.
To me, it goes along with the main room in the Forest Temple and the big room in the Desert Colossus. There's a couple rooms like this that are just, they're iconic. This is in the same realm for sure.
Yeah, like I remember getting to the second floor on the pillar and just looking up. Have I been there? Have I been there? You're like literally just using the C-stick to look around to see where you've been. And it just had that big, like that vibe to it.
One thing that you brought up to me is that when you get there in that room, you can see where you need to go.
There's that hookshot target you see it the whole time, and that's the last room you really go to, but you can't reach it. And I think right behind it is the door, or maybe one room later, the boss key door.
In the fire temple, you can go to that one room and see the boss key door, but in this, I like how you're not quite sure what is there, but you know you can't reach it for some reason.
Right.
And you would never guess the first time you're playing it that the item is a long shot.
Did you like the dungeon item in this case?
I think it's a little disappointing because it's just the same item but better. But to be fair, you get the hook shot in the graveyard from Dampe, so it's kind of like an additional item. I'm not gonna get too mad about it.
Yeah, this is something that Nintendo has done time and time again, where you get an item and then it gets upgraded later on. I mean, this happened in the original Legend of Zelda. You get the magic wand and then you get the magic book and it shoots fire, but it's still the same item. And more specifically, I guess Twilight Princess, you got the claw shot and then you got the double claw shot. And it allowed the developers, I guess, to create barriers. You get this item now, all those barriers are removed. And there was a few puzzles. I remember one of them where there was like a gate and there was a hookshot target behind it. I think you have to shoot a bow. You shoot the eye, the target goes, but then you don't have enough time to jump and swim over there. And you have to hookshot. You remember that particularly?
I believe you need the long shot for it too.
Right, yeah.
Speaking of the kind of aesthetic of it, it feels a little claustrophobic.
There's the big open corridor, but then whenever you go down the little pathways, they're all small rooms and it's water filled.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you have to go underwater to make progress. They're narrow hallways in some cases.
And there are some rooms where you have to float up to the top, but you don't know what's up there, or you have to hook shot up, but you don't know what's up there. There's one room where you hit a switch and a gate opens, and then the, like, what are the crab enemies called? Some of those come down and some of those, like, spike balls come down, and you're just, like, right by them, you know, and you're trapped in this low ceiling room with these enemies, you know?
Right.
And you're restricted. You can only use your hook shot.
Hook shot, I believe. Yeah, you can't use your sword. So we did touch upon the bosses before, and we did a whole video, or a whole section we talked about Dark Link, but it's worth, I guess, revisiting the atmosphere of that room.
Yeah, it goes along with the aesthetic we were talking about. There's something more to this place than just it's a water-based dungeon.
And in particular, in that specific room, because as soon as you enter it, it looks like it's never ending in all directions. There's no walls. It's not until after you fight Dark Link and beat him then the walls appear.
One thing I was told recently that I didn't know about was you can see your reflection, but then when you get to the door and you can't pass, you don't have a reflection anymore.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, but yeah, we talked about that in our mini bosses video. One of the most iconic mini bosses too.
Yeah, for sure. People remember him from Adventure of Link, and he sort of has made reoccurring appearances now ever since then in almost half the Zelda games. There's also Morpha, in my opinion, one of the more underwhelming bosses in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
It's just like a giant, it was like a squid with a brain, or when I think of like Volvagia, it's just like flying around. He's a fire-breathing dragon, or Phantom Ganon, like that. It's almost like a headless horseman type deal. You know, I have these iconic pictures in my head. Morpha, I don't have that at all.
There's nothing really that fun too about trying to hookshot the eye out of the thing.
It's a very weak battle.
Yeah.
It's probably in my opinion, one of the low points of this temple. I think of all the bosses in Ocarina, if I were to rank them, this is the lowest one. So do you think the Water Temple gets too much criticism?
I can see how it's very frustrating the first time, but I actually think it's one of the best dungeons.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think, especially in Ocarina of Time 3D, because the pausing is the one thing I totally understand. But I think it's one of the best dungeons, and I think it's clearly one of the most memorable dungeons, because people are still talking about it. We're still making this video right now in 2017.
I like that this one kind of harkens back to the more old school dungeons where you have to really think about where you are and where you need to go. Let us know where you stand with it, if you hate it, if you think it's overhyped with the difficulty, whatever. Let us know if you like this focusing on just one dungeon. Let us know what other topics you'd like us to discuss. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. Hey everybody, I'm chilling here with the King of Red Lions. It's a little spoiler for an upcoming video we have, probably next week sometime. So look out for that. Let us know if you enjoyed the deep dive into the water temple. If you did, maybe we'll do it for other topics. Doesn't even have to be a dungeon, just any specific thing. Obviously, we cover a broad range of topics. We could talk about whatever, but let us know if you enjoyed the deep dive. If you want to subscribe, of course, you can click this icon. You'll know whenever we have new videos. Yeah, if you enjoyed this video, we'll put some more videos over here over this beautiful King of Red Lion statue. Click on them, check them out. Maybe you'll like them. And yeah, thanks again for watching.